in Costa Rica this morning in the shower with my Pure Vita play scrub. I was like, let me just get in the mood.
Oh yeah, and I love being able to just roll around in the sand, roll around with coffee scrubs. It's like coming back to earth. I was just telling the community and Amplified Impact in here that like I brought this backdrop because I wanted people to feel like the nature that we get to connect to. And as I was bringing on Kristie Taylor this morning, I was thinking and contemplating just how I got to know you through my sister. And you were like this god to her, like she's sober. And we went to Guatemala together, and like you were such an inspiration to her. And like I just want to cry a little bit because it came full circle when we were able to go to her wedding and talk about the growth of my little sister and who you were to her. But then last year, the way in which you entered my world in the coaching and growing your business and having more impact from the heart. And you're one of my greatest clients. I tell everyone I have goosebumps about back to the basics and the soil, the plant right behind you and what that means. It's like,
I keep the jungle.
the first thing that Kristie said to me is like, I don't know if you're the right business coach for me because I don't know if I want it to be yoga. I don't know if I like want to grow my business with yoga. And then as Kristie got to know me and my methodology and what I believe is that everything is yoga. And so now if you go follow her on Instagram, Rootbound Yoga, which she branded as we grew her business last year, she's a yoga transformational coach because everything is yoga. Being in the soil, being in the dirt, and drinking good water. I was filling up my water jug before we got here, and I was like, Kristie would be proud of me, filtered water. So Kristie, thank you. Welcome to the community. Thank you for being a ripple in my life, the waves in the world. Can you introduce yourself to the community here?
Oh my gosh, it's such an honor. Thank you so much, Amber. Thank you for just creating this community for women like me to be a part of. Hey, everyone, I'm Kristie Taylor, born and raised in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Ooh. Gosh, I am now a transformational yoga coach, and that so rings true, Amber. I've even had the question, do I even need to know how to do yoga in order to sign up for your course? And so it's already come full circle. And no, there's so many, well, there's 8 limbs of yoga, right? And the asana just being one of them, the movement just being one. And just my experience as a woman has led me into your realm for sure. For sure. So right now I'm running my second go around of a program that I created during my time with Amber in Amplified Impact. Amber took me from lost to launch in about, I love to say that too, from lost to launch in about 3 months, in less than 3 months. And what I mean by that is I had really started my yoga journey, my healing journey, probably about the same time that I met your sister. I was just coming back home to Colorado after being gone for 15 years. Was, 11 years sober at the time, just passing over a decade sober, and exiting out of the aesthetics industry as a laser tech for tattoo removal, which I loved, but I just needed something a little more meaningful, like the heartstrings started pulling, which led me back to the soil that I was raised on. And that's when I met your sister and I started traveling the world, also like just following the heartstrings, something else bigger was out there. That led me to India, to Guatemala with Megs, which we definitely climbed and conquered the mountains on the outside and within. And it was really beautiful, and I just wanted more. And then COVID happened. And so I'm not too sure when you Amber went to Vinyasa. But I know I moved back and met Megs in 2017, right around the time, like just really wanting to broaden my practice. And that's about the same time that I started following you, because you were newly in Costa Rica, correct? Yes. And I was just seeing what was happening on that side of the world and just loving the energy pouring from your social media and how you were becoming. And then you were in India for 2020. And I had just gotten back and I felt like this is where the like streams were starting to connect, right? And like the older I get, it's so much fun because you get to focus out and then really start to see the bigger picture focus, like come into focus a little more clearly. And so as you were, you know, really getting into your business in India during 2020, I was also really dealing with a lot, going through a lot of shadow work, unlearning a lot of things, and really stepping into my spirituality and my yoga practice. And that's when my gifts kind of slowly started to become apparent, right? Of like, oh, wow, these are things that I can actually help others with. And so I was looking, I probably spent about 3 to 5 months deciding where I wanted to take my first YTT. And because of your influence, I booked Vinyasa in October 2020, which got canceled. And then was rescheduled for July 2021, got canceled again. And I just like something was just like, oh, well, we're on for the ride. It doesn't matter. And then finally, a group of 16 of us women from all across the world met up at Vinyasa in Dominical and Costa Rica in October of 2021. And I was dying to just get some FaceTime with you, but because of the circumstances, you know, COVID was just coming through to Costa Rica, and, you know, we were asked to keep a bubble, and I totally respect that. And so we didn't get FaceTime. And but I felt you there, you know, especially with all of the wonderful, wonderful teachers that we had and that you and I get to share. And yeah, upon coming back to the US after a 30-day immersion, integration was hard, especially at that time. Like we were pretty on fire, literally, especially in Colorado that summer of 2021. And yeah, integration was hard. And I had like all of the heartstrings were pulling at once to really not go back to the norm and to start creating. And that's when you dropped into my DMs at like the perfect time one day.
Yeah. What I really love about your story is anyone listening that's ever been on a spiritual journey, which if you're listening, I know that you have, it's you get placed these little things along the way, stepping stones, signs, signals, whatever you want to call it. And it's your job to follow, to listen. And they just keep taking you where you're meant to go, where you're meant to grow. And there's roadblocks, right? COVID happened, no teacher training. COVID happened, no teacher training, and the perfect time it came. And as you can hear, like Kristie's a new yoga teacher, but she's been on this journey for a while. It's not that she just started this business when she started her YTT. It's that she's been growing since basically she got sober, you know, and really starting to sit in the uncomfortability of not numbing out and what that means to your story and to your message. And that when I messaged Kristie, I remember she answered one of my polls on Instagram about wanting to start a business. And it created this conversation where she was actually at a turning point in her job. And she's like, I need something new. And it's like, there's another sign from the universe that like for this random time, she answered a story that created a conversation from someone who had been following me for years that I didn't really know, but she had been in my world and she'd watched my evolution of moving to Costa Rica back in 2015 and then getting stuck in the COVID-19 lockdown and then taking my business online and then helping tons of women. And so she was witnessing my spiritual journey and my becoming. And then that relationship that we had been building on Instagram became a relationship where like we got to go and dance like our butts off at my sister's wedding back in December. But like to be able to co-create this relationship together, like, what is your mission, Kristie? What are you doing? And I remember when you gave me one of your first testimonials, you're like, I'm just going to become a yoga teacher to deepen my practice. Like this wasn't about serving. And now I have goosebumps once again, like conversations with you. It always happens that your gifts were started to unlock, your passion for helping others. One of the things that Kristie said to me is, I've always been leading women. I've always been able to call women forward. And so her first launch, she had 3 women, and one of those women told someone, and in the next launch, she goes, she had like 7 people already reaching out about this program. And she too feared, like, can I do this? Am I going to be able to do this? What is my mission? What is my message? But like, she did the soul work and she answered the calls and she just kept showing up, and it started to unfold. And I think that if we're here and we're listening, if you're not questioning, then you're not doing the work. Like I've been in deep contemplation recently, and Kristie's like, yep, it's the eclipse. Yep, it's the full moon. And I'm like, shoot, but it's like, we're part of nature. And that's what I love so much about your program and what you teach is this is yoga in the modern world. Like, how many yoga classes were you teaching and working a job, and you still could barely afford to do what you wanted? And then that shifted. And she's like, okay, now that I've made a little money in my business, I'm going to invest more in my business. She branded herself. She did a website. She collaborated with another friend. She made a friend from Amplified Impact, and they hosted a workshop. I'm not sure how that went in Colorado to get connections that she started to make. But really, it's like, how can you listen to the voice inside of you, the calling inside of you to take what you already know? Tell us about Back to the Basics. What is your coaching program about? And how does this have to do with yoga and your ability to lead and make impact for women coming together in your world?
Right. And just so, yeah, just like, when I started putting together, and that's what you really helped me do, is take all of the ideas that I had up here that had been bubbling and formulating and coming to fruition for many years, right? Many years. I mean, just my bout with sobriety in my mid to late 20s. I mean, that was my first pathway into working with other women, you know, to get to a different level. And yeah, it was sponsorship, right? And even though, you know, and then a decade later, as I let that go and I met your sister, that was the first job that I had actually managing 8 to 12 women, you know, in a day, which is huge because somebody's always going to have a day, right? And like, if you're lucky, only one person is having a hard time. And so like during, and that was over 12 years, the difference from sponsoring women in sobriety to managing women in an industry. And then just kind of really getting familiar and watching the patterns. And I feel like this is like one of my gifts, is that I'm really able to pick out patterns in people from this perspective that they don't typically have. And, you know, from the inside, and being able to work several years watching those patterns happen, and then coming out of COVID into a place where just the women in my life were struggling, you know, from women running their own corporate businesses and killing it, to stay-at-home moms just taking care of kids, to single moms working and, you know, raising 2 children at once. Like, all of the patterns seem to be the same. And, you know, so like all of these things started turning in my head. And one of the things that stuck out the most was in early sobriety, I would freak out, you know, when the little things actually bother you. And I would freak out, and I would call my sponsor, and she would be like, okay, let's pause. What have you had to drink? What have you had to eat? how much sleep have you had? And who have you reached out to today to get out of yourself? And like those things really stuck. And those are some of the things that I really took along in my everyday life that helped me to continue to achieve 15 years of sobriety today. And to be able to expand the capacity to take on several things. So lots of things added to Back to Basics. So Back to Basics is a 12-week program to help any sort of woman to have a sustainable self-care practice so that she can tap into the multifascist world of being a woman. And that's one of the things, Amber, that I really loved about Amplified Impact and working with you one-on-one coaching is that you told me that I could do it all. You did not tell me that I had to, Kristie, you should really just figure out what it is that you want to do and go for it. You were like, no, 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 no. You are good at this. You are good at this. You want to do this. You want to help this over here. Guess what? You get to do all of those things. Let me show you how. And it was just really lovely because when we are multi-passionate about so many things, we're really able to bring them together with the help of different perspectives, right? And that's what coaching has done so well for me, is to like bring all these ideas and be able to make them tangible in my life and in somebody else's life at the same time. And so bringing self-care back, especially in the modern day world and especially in the United States here, I'm sure everywhere else too, we're pulled in so many directions. We always get put on the back burner, especially if you're a mom, you're not first. Baby says you're not first. And yeah, it's all of those things.
I really love this so much because it's like when you are able to look at your life as an example, like you sharing the story about sponsorship and the questions that you were being asked, you started to embody that. And as you started to embody that, you weaved that into the yoga and into the coaching. And it wasn't another certificate. It wasn't another person appointing you to be the self-care coach or the transformational coach. It was you looking at what had got Kristie to 15 years of sobriety, what had got Kristie to teaching, 10 to 12 women on how to not sweat the small stuff and asking these simple questions. And it's like you appointed yourself, and having someone as your coach reminding you of your power. It's like you didn't need me. You just needed remembering on like what it was like to go back and go through. And I think that's what happens sometimes in the coaching world is like, I need someone to fix this. But if we look at the yoga world, we know that no one can fix out there. And before I became a business coach, I was the self-care coach because that's how I started to find that's who I became. It was from living the yoga. And now being a mother, which is why I love this conversation so much, is I'm going back to the basics and remembering that I have to have my meditation when he's feeding. I do my stretches at night. I used to not be a person that could not do a practice in the evening. I always did it in the morning, but my son wants to snuggle and he wants to explore and he needs me in the morning. So I go last, but I always go. At the end of the day, I do my yoga, I do my meditation. So it shifted what I prioritize because I want to be an example. And that's what Amplified Impact is all about, is like, I got to see what happened when women started prioritizing themselves and what happened in their relationships, their work environments, and here, how do you feel? And now I get to be that example for my child. And I was just listening to an interview yesterday with Jenna Kutcher and Matthew McConaughey. And he said, if you want to impact the world, you want to be an entrepreneur, raise better children. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
Okay, pressure's on, but like I take that responsibility with pride, with joy, with excitement, because he gets to see mom prioritizes her. And when you teach people how to go back to the basics, that can be so simple, but so freaking profound, and something that really came to my mind as we're coming back to the basics and you stepping into your power, stepping into your leadership, running 2 successful rounds of back to the basics and working with women. There was a really big hurdle that we got to go through together, and that I've gone through, and that's money mindset. And what happens when we go to charge our services? And what happens when people start to pay us for our services? And how it's like, I talk about this a lot because in one launch, you made your money back and then some, but it wasn't even about making your money back as it was the clients and what came through for the work that you did with me and with your therapist, and what this is going to do for future generations. Because we're talking about modern yoga here. We're talking about making a living, doing what you love and not being in the rat race, and being an example for our children. And I think that we've been really conditioned by society that you need a 9-to-5 to be successful. You need to work harder. You need to be at some place at some time and have tons of certificates. Where, like, Kristie, you're the living example of, like, this is where you are now. You didn't need any more certificates. You looked at your life, you looked at what you've done, and then there came this block. Do you want to speak to that a little bit? Because I know that for me, it was a huge one. When I first started selling the Live Your Yoga mentorship and charging a price, it felt so uncomfortable for me. And then when I started to make money, how to reinvest that money, and it was such a big piece of my healing. And then I got to see that reflected back in our relationship together and the work that you personally did yourself.
Totally. Yeah. And what a great topic, right? I'll just speak to my own experience. My life didn't start changing until I started investing in myself. I mean, period.
Talk about self-love, self-care, back to the basics, right?
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I love that you say, and thank you, like, especially here, we think that we have to have all of these papers and stamps and backed up education that we pay lots of money for, to do something with our life, or to be able to tap into our authentic self or our authentic gifts. And you're right. I already had this toolbox full of 15 years of lessons. And yeah, there were lots of certificates in there, and there were some licensures. But I'm finding that even as I'm helping some really successful women in my program who are part of the corporate world and who aren't interested in leaving it because it does give them a lot of security and they're killing it by leading other women, they also already have all the tools that they need, right? And so, and it's funny that my first launch, bringing just women back to these really basic needs, I was the only thing that was in my way, and I didn't sell out. So I keep the program pretty small. It's a six person max, just so we can keep it really intimate, and I could give you all of my undivided attention. That may change soon, just because this last back to basics 6 maxed out, and it feels good and it feels comfortable, and I've been able to now, with the practice, expand my capacity to hold space for more, right? And that's just by practicing. And so what I realized from first launch, there was a lot of fear, of course. Like, there's always going to be fear when you are stepping out of the unknown into building your own business, which has been the biggest force into a relationship to the parts of me that I wasn't ready to face yet. And so a lot came from that. And then what I realized from first launch to second launch was that I was the only one standing in my way. And the specific thing that was standing in the way that taps into the money blocks that Amber's talking about is I didn't know my worth. I didn't know my own worth. And I had said it and I had stated it, because in the 2.5 weeks that I went from loss to launch, while I'm working with you, Amber, you were like, okay, it's time to kind of pick a price, and $1,200 came into my head. And I'm like, yep, I'm worth it. I'm good. I'm not going back. And I haven't. And it has pulled in and drawn the most wonderful women into my life who are ready, right? Like who are ready to make a change. Because I feel like $1,200 does, but for some, $1,200 is disposable, which I'm also learning. But yeah, I had put it out there that wasn't an issue, but really believing that I was worth it was not like the line I had crossed yet from first launch to second. And what changed that is showing up consistently for my own practices, practicing my own program.
And that's what I love so much, Kristie, is you're like, Amber, you were drawn to me because I seen you living your yoga. I seen you living it. People are drawn to you because you're living back to the basics. And so when I talk to people about like, okay, how do I get more people in my program? How do I get my program selling out? It's like, are you living your work? And oftentimes it's like, yeah, but. And we have to remove the but. We have to go all into our own teachings, and the vibrational frequency that we become, that's what shifts. And the moment you start believing that you're worth it, she went from 3 in her first launch to 6 in her second launch because she changed what she believed about herself. And that comes with admitting it, and this is where I see a lot of blocks happen when people go to scale. You're only worth it up until this point. And so when you have that resistance about charging a price, it's like, as a new yoga teacher and a new coach, being able to charge $1,200 for a 3-month experience, how many yoga classes would you need to teach? And how much impact can you really have in one yoga class or a group of yoga classes, opposed to working side by side with Kristie for 3 months and having someone in your corner to come back to? What have you drank? What have you ate? Have you talked to a friend? Have you taken 5 deep breaths? And this shift where it's like, I know for me, my clients still send me from 3 years ago, Amber, I still use the practices in the Live Your Yoga mentorship. So yes, I paid Amber $2,500, but the return on investment is the rest of my life. So I love what you say about investing in yourself, because that's with time, getting onto your yoga mat, that's going out into nature, that's being with good friends, that's being here, listening to this podcast, and soul work that comes from investing in your time, but also being able to invest in the skills that you need to grow your business if you don't have what you need. And sometimes in the beginning, we're learning the skills, but right now, me and Kristie aren't working together. When she goes to launch another program, when she goes to plan out the end of her year, she's like, hey, let's have a strategy session. I want you back in my corner, but it's not something where she needs me. It's, I desire to have you back in my corner again. And when she got onto this call, I'm like, give me a hug. I miss you. I miss you here. But it's like, you invest in the beginning to get the tools, the confidence, the embodiment practices. We did a lot of Kundalini together, and she's like, I miss my practice, Amber. Like, I'm doing all your Kundalini crap, but like, where's my practice? And I was like, no, you have to wake that energy up. You have to get your vibration strong. And then once you do, then you go back to the basics. You come back to who you are and what it is that you believe in that's going to get you to where you grow. And we try things on. We try new hats. And I love what you said too about the corporate world, because there's a lot of clients that we'll all get to work with that don't desire to be leaders. But those that do, that feel the calling, it's like, it's your job to show up and the people will come, which for me, it's like being an entrepreneur, being a yogipreneur, being a coach is a spiritual journey of who you grow to become, and our capacity to hold space for more, as Kristie spoke of, 3 in the first round, 6 in the second round. And I remember in the first round, she's like 2, 3, okay, maybe 4 or 5, and she was like, she was pushing that edge. And it was the next round, I was ready for more. So really starting to ask yourself, what are you ready for more? And what's calling you forward? What's asking you to rise? Because you can't be pointing out there wondering why you're not getting the clients, why you're not making the money, why you're not earning more, if you're not willing to look at what it is that you're believing and thoughts that you've been told about the past and in action. Are you not taking actual action? And so I don't know, Kristie, if you have anything that you would love to share to someone listening who feels like they're ready for more. Maybe they're in burnout, as you had mentioned. Maybe they're wanting to step more into their business. Maybe they're trying to find out like what's next for them. Like, what advice would you give them for you who took the leap just 1 year ago to start her business and now is like growing into a successful entrepreneur that gets to make her own schedule?
I feel, and this, I was just faced with this yesterday, as a matter of fact. Get definitive, get define about your goals, and so whatever it is that you want to achieve, whether it's weight loss, finding a self-care practice, scaling up your business, finding your first coach, like whatever it is, sit down for just 10 minutes. That's it. Just 10 minutes. Everybody has 10 minutes. Just sit down for 10 minutes, set your timer, and really define what the goals are that you want. Like, and when the money block came in, right, I have to define what money looks like for me. Like how much do I want to make in the next year? Like what definitively does my business look like in the next year? And until I get defined with whatever the goals are that I want, it's going to be up here all wavy. Really to get grounded is to define what the future looks like for whatever it is that you're trying to achieve.
Back to the basics, has a plant back behind her. She's like running a garden for the community.
For rooting, right?
Literally rooting down, but it's like getting super clear on what it is you want. And one of my gifts is helping you take all of your ideas, ground them down into a solid foundation so that you can grow into the biggest tree that your little heart desires. And some of us, like, there's numbers out there in the world, 6 figures, 7 figures. Let's not ask how much money they want to make. How much does it cost you to live just to pay your bills? How much money does it cost you to pay your bills and then invest into something? How much does it cost you to pay your bills, invest into something, go on vacation and take a month off? Get clear on how much money you need to make to live your dream life, and don't let all the noise out there of what other coaches or people are talking about. What is it that your heart desires, and why is it that you want that number? Because when you get defined, as Kristie said, you get clear on what's going to work for you so that you can grow there and not get caught up in all the noise happening in the online world, because there is a lot of chatter out there. And I don't like the numbers. Like, I didn't start my business to make money, to grow super big. I started my business because I wanted to impact more lives, and I was sick of hustling. I was sick of not having enough to invest in myself. And what I love so much about Kristie is she went on vacation. She went back to her hometown during her first launch. And she's like, I'm bringing my work to my favorite cafes. I'm creating. When you love what you do, you get to take it with you on vacation. And if you go to your sister's wedding, I took the entire time off because I wanted to be present. So you get to choose what you do in your own schedule, and success get defined. What does that look like for you? If you are someone right now that's looking for coming back to yourself, for self-care, getting back to the basics, I'm going to drop all of the links to Kristie on her Instagram and onto her page so that you can apply for the wait list to join Coming Back to the Basics. She is, really just the definition of what it means to live and lead by example. And I would love for you to connect with her. If you're in a space where you're like, I want to grow my business, I want to get clear on my offers, I want to find a way to grow, nurture, and sell, I'll tell you one thing. Kristie said to me, Amber, I don't want to show up online as much as you show up online. And I said, that's good, because not everything that your coach does is going to be how you want to do it. Kristie has sold 3 spots in her first launch, 6 spots in her second launch, and you've never ran a masterclass before, have you?
No.
She doesn't do it all of the ways that I teach, but she's done it in other ways that I teach. So in Amplified Impact, you get to find your own unique sales strategy that enrolls anywhere from $1,200 for 3 months to 2,500 for 3 months to 5,000. You get to choose your price. You get to choose your strategy. You get to choose your way. I'm going to give you an abundance of options and things that work. And I call it the soul aligned strategy because it's your way. And Kristie here is an example of doing things that I taught her and doing things that she doesn't align with. And it's a perfect example that you get to do it your own way when we get to do it together. I'll drop the link for Amplified Impact if you're wanting to grow your business. And if you're wanting to grow yourself, coming back home to who you are, I'll drop the links for Kristie. Is there anything that you want to say, Kristie, about amplifying your impact? What it means to be a ripple and a wave?
I just know that we all, especially as women, can feel when those heartstrings start pulling. Just feel into it and just know that there is a whole sea of women leaders out here to help you unpack your gifts and to share them with others, because that is the greatest thing that I feel any of us can be doing. Yeah. An amplified impact. Yes.
That just like, it warms my heart so much to hear you say that, because I'm like, how can I have a bigger difference? I'm like, to be the ripple in the wave, to live and lead your life by example. And how do you do that? Take your gifts, your passions, your skills, and create your own life philosophies and teach that to the people that you're attracting into your life. And then when they go and live their life back to the basics, it's like, oh, now Kristie is inside of these families, or the Live Your Yoga mentorship. Now these people living the Live Your Yoga are in those families. And so it's like your work starts to take out into the families of the clients that you're working with, and you get to be the wave, but it starts with you appointing yourself. It starts with you following the little poles, as Kristie analogied so well, is listening to the heart poles and going for it.
Yeah, totally.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for being
Amber.
here, Kristie. You're such a gift to my life, and I will
anytime
talk to anyone that's here that's listening. If you get something out of this, be sure to screenshot it, tag Kristie and I. Let us know what really landed and resonated for you. Organically sharing your voice, your message allows us to make bigger ripples in the waves. If you're listening to the podcast, you can leave us a review on Apple iTunes. And yeah, it's always a good place for us to connect back on the internet. Bye.
Thank you so much,